happen with Andy's team. So just welcome everyone. We've got the chat going. If anyone is struggling with the sound, if you were to have a look at the bottom right-hand side, typically if you've got the Zoom app loaded on your desktop, you'll see there's live transcription, so you can actually see the subtitles as we're going through and talking. Chat is open, and nice to see people using that. Good morning, everyone. So let's kick off. What an interesting day yesterday. We had a draft of an instruction come out last year in October. I think it was September, October. And the intention was that the instruction would be finalized and issued in December, and National Treasury had a lot of issues that hit them in November. We're unable to get that finalized, but yes, on the 8th, which is yesterday, one day away, on the 8th of June, National Treasury issued the long awaited instruction to revise the thresholds. So we're going to cover some of that. What I suggest that we do is discuss the two announcements which I'm aware of, and if there are any others, colleagues, please do shout and unmute and say, hey Sean, there's also something that came out from wherever, I don't know, might not have them all, but last week, early last week, there was an amendment that was put out by the Accountant General around the irregular expenditure framework, and then of course yesterday the revised thresholds came out. Just briefly on the irregular expenditure framework and the amendment that happened there's two paragraphs that were amended. This is the original paragraph. The original paragraph is literally 2 lines. The accounting officer or accounting authority must record details of the confirmed non-compliance in the checklist as contained in Appendix A in this framework. That's all that paragraph 18 said in the original irregular expenditure framework. This was issued in 2019, and the amended is a little bit more detailed, and it has a 30-day limit in there. The accounting officer, accounting authority must confirm allegations into irregular expenditure within 30 days after the alleged irregular expenditure has been reported to the accounting officer or accounting authority. If there are disputes regarding whether the alleged irregular expenditure meets the definition of irregular expenditure, the assessment process must be conducted and completed within 3 months from the date the alleged irregular expenditure was reported to the accounting officer or accounting authority. Confirmed non-compliance must be recorded in the checklist as contained in Appendix A. So there's a whole range of steps that need to take place before it actually gets into the Appendix A, which is in the framework. And that's really all it is. The Appendix A in the framework is the one where you basically would write down the amounts and what transgressed. And then there's a whole range of issues, the disciplinary process referred to, and recovery and criminal charges and condemnation. So what paragraph 18 is all about is a whole range of stuff that must be done before it gets into the checklist. So if somebody alleges that there was irregular expenditure, then within 30 days after that alleged irregular expenditure has been reported, if there then that must be confirmed. That 30 days is to confirm that, and then if there is a dispute regarding that, then that assessment must be conducted within 3 months from the date of that alleged irregular expenditure being reported to the accounting officer, accounting authority. So a range of things, and then once it's gone through these hurdles, then it goes into the Appendix A. So that is the first paragraph that was amended. And sorry, I thought there was another one, but I don't seem to have it in here, which was paragraph 21. Paragraph 21, let me just quickly check. I thought I had put that together. Just give me a moment, please. Any comments on that particular point that came through on the version, on the amendment? Any points on that one? Any comments anyone want to raise? I think it does mean that there is some work that needs to be done in this respect. So
Hi, Sean.
yeah, hi.
Hi, this is Theo. I've raised my hand.
Hello, Theo. Thank you, Theo. Go ahead.
I've seen the dates, the timelines that are put in, that the whole process should be finished. What happens if the process is not finished and then it's past those dates?
I'm unsure, Theo. That's a great question. Is there something elsewhere in the framework that we maybe need to just go through around that? A great question. Anyone have any thoughts on that? So what Theo is saying, my apologies, I can't always see all their hands. So Theo's asking, Ron, go ahead, any thoughts?
These are just thoughts, Sean. I haven't applied my mind. I haven't even read the document yet. So in the initial guidance before the new framework came out, when National Treasury issued the official guidelines, they mentioned that the issue of time is irrelevant to irregular expenditure. So, for example, if you made a late payment beyond the 30 days, which are required for government departments, that payment does not constitute irregular expenditure. Whether they've now included that in the new frequently answered questions or not, I do not know. I'm assuming that if any processes are late in terms of this document, and that does not in itself then constitute irregular expenditure. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I would concur. I think there are some, Theo, there probably are some policy decisions that should be made around who the delegation point here. So that probably would be a good one to also include around what happens if there is not. I guess what this is saying is, hey, delegate this to someone. If there is some dispute around that, investigate that within the 3 months. Somebody makes a decision or makes a call on it. There will still be, I imagine, an official audit that will take place thereafter. And at that point in the audit, the AG then might take a view on this. Komoto is the 3 months applies to the confirmation that the transaction is irregular, not necessarily the investigation or conclusion of the case. Yes, absolutely. It's just concluding whether this is indeed irregular. Yeah, good point. So probably the policy should just say, hey, there's a person here that needs to make a call on this one, and then yeah, Ron.
Sorry, I was just removing my hand.
Okay, so that's really 18. I think there's some work to be done to really unpack this a little bit further, and Theo, go ahead.
Yes, Sean. The reason why I'm asking for these timelines, if I remember, it was 2 years back. There was a case of in one of the municipalities, but it was not involving irregular expenditure. But there was a delay in those cases where they have to complete everything within that time frame they were given. But after that, the whole case was thrown out of the court because there was those delays of those times that were set for that case. So what will happen in this case now? If it's 3 months past, does it mean it's going to be thrown out? It's not going to be regarded as irregular expenditure.
Interesting. Are you referring to the Cape Town, City of Cape Town case?
Yes.
That, yeah, that's an interesting one. I'll have a look at that one and see if there's something there. Interesting points, Theo. Let's see if we can try and unpack that. We're not going to have all the answers today, but let's see if we can come back to some of these things next week or the week after. I'm just also keeping note. I have invited a couple of other people as well to join. I did extend an invitation to National Treasury. Also asked Prof. Gio Kino if he had a chance to join us, but let's see. So I'll just keep an eye on that. Paragraph 21, the update to this is also this 30-day assessment point is included here. So the original in the framework said that the determination test referred to in paragraph 19 must commence within 30 days after the irregular expenditure was reported. The amended is saying the determination test referred to must commence and be finalized within 30 days after assessment of the irregular expenditure. If there are disputes, the determination process must be completed within 4 months after the assessment of the irregular expenditure. So this, and your point again, Theo, would probably come in here again. So it's both around the determination point as well as the actual confirmation of the allegation of the irregular expenditure. So 2 points probably would need to be unpacked a little bit further. That's it. I haven't looked in detail at the frequently asked questions update, which was issued as well. And it does look like a well, presented FAQ document. And that might certainly be one for us to have a look at. It had a range of really interesting scenarios in it, the FAQ document that was updated and issued. So I'd encourage you to have a look at that one. Let's get on to the real exciting point of the changes that took place. And this is around the instruction 2, which was issued yesterday. Just a quick question. Anyone want to put a comment in the chat? What is instruction 1 all about? This is instruction 2, SCM instruction number 2. What was instruction number 1 all about? Anybody want to quickly?
It was about it's lean duration. It was about revising the reporting dates on PPE procurement.
Was it that? Or was it the one on, gee whiz, now you got me. I thought it was actually the one around the fact that the departure of advertising, it's the departure from advertisements of tenders on the government tender bulletin and the e-tender one. I think the one you're referring to, which is a really good point. Thanks for raising that, Lindy. I think that was actually issued under a circular. And yes, the correspondence procurement dates, that was issued as a circular on the 5th of May. And then instruction 1 is just saying, hey, it's National Treasury, government tender bulletin is not working. E-tenders is not working, and we've got this power that's given to us in the PFMA as National Treasury to say if we have to, we can actually override a regulation, and so they've said until such time as there's further correspondence to this effect, you don't have to advertise in the government tender bulletin, and nor on e-tenders. Interesting that the e-tenders still is active. in some quasi format, but not. All right, good. Grant, you raise your hand.
Yes, Sean. I just want to find out what the other colleagues are actually doing about the advertising at the moment. So I saw that eTender, like you said, you know, they actually just saying you have to. I think it's like a manual submission, whereas we used to have a login. But Government Gazette and all the other things, what are we actually doing about advertising at the moment? Where are we advertising other than those two, or am I wrong that saying that they're still unavailable?
There is a version of the eTender bulletin which is available and is being used. But hey, you've asked the question, what are people doing? Where are they advertising? Lenora?
Hi, Sean.
Yeah.
We use our own website to advertise. We do those send to the provincial treasury to advertise wherever they can, but we also advertise through our own website.
Lenora, and I think that's what most people are doing. Is that what you're seeing elsewhere in Gauteng province?
Hello?
Is that what you're also seeing in the other departments in Gauteng?
Yes, we advertise in our own education website.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. And I think most people are doing that. What was interesting about the instruction is previously there was some communication to say that you need to continue to check or something, and it placed some onus on you, to keep a record that you've been unable to do it, and that certainly is no longer a requirement here. So yeah, I certainly haven't seen any pickup in adverts in newspapers and elsewhere. So you're right. Let's have a look at this one. This is an important instruction and very significant in many ways. Now, what is the applicability of this instruction before we get into the detail? This is an instruction issued under PFMA Treasury Regulation 16A. So it applies to all departments, national, provincial departments, constitutional institutions, and all public entities listed as Schedule 3As and 3Cs. So Schedule 2s, 3Bs, and 3Ds are not covered by this one. And nor were they covered by the old practice note that came out in 2007. And so, yes, the Schedule 2s and the 3Bs and the 3Ds still can decide what the thresholds are that they will include in their policies. This instruction is effective from the 1st of July and does not apply retrospectively. Procurement processes that have commenced prior to the coming into effect of this instruction must be concluded on the basis of the prescript that was applicable when they were invited or advertised. So if on the 30th of June, you issue a tender, for example, and it's you expect this tender to be 750,000, you can't now suddenly turn that tender into a quotation process. You need to stick with the process that you started with at the time that you invited bidders to respond or you advertised. And this does repeal, and it looks like it's in its entirety National Treasury Practice Note number 8 of 2007, which was issued in 2007, November 2007. So that old one has been repealed, and I think there was one paragraph in that was repealed by another practice note, but the rest of this is gone. So this is history now. So from the 1st of July, then certainly this is effective. Now, What does it say? So this is on the thresholds, and of course the first threshold that everybody looks at is petty cash. In the 2007 version of instruction 8, said practice note 8 said that hey, it's 2,000 rand, up to 2,000 rand. Accounting officers, accounting authorities must establish their own internal procedures to ensure sound financial management of funds where goods and or services are obtained by means of petty cash. So that really was there. 2007. The new version, the 2000 stays. That has not changed at all. You may procure goods and services by means of petty cash up to the value of 2,000 without inviting price quotations or following a bidding process. There are two very deliberate paragraphs that then follow, which are not as deliberately stated in the old practice note. Accounting officers, accounting authorities must determine and prescribe their own internal procedures to ensure sound financial management of funds when goods and or services are procured by means of petty cash. No real change to the old practice note, but the new one, accounting officers may, for security and any other reason, decide not to utilize petty cash for procurement of goods and services. Where this decision is taken, the accounting officer must then procure goods and services that would have otherwise been procured by means of petty cash through price quotations in compliance with conditions prescribed for price quotations. Not significant, because if there was a decision to include or not use petty cash, then certainly that would have already been in the policy. But it does make it explicit here that if for security or any other reason you decide not to use it, then you must certainly then use price quotations. Verbal quotations in the 2007 practice note. Grant, yeah, go ahead, Grant, you've got a question.
Yes, Sean, once again, just getting a bit pedantic. When we say petty cash, do we actually mean like a petty cash box that we pay out? Or I know in some institutions, petty cash, you know, the 2,000 is still used as a threshold, but even if it is via an EFT or on account.
Yeah, so there's, as long as the controls are in place, as far as I understand, and I don't think there's been a huge focus around the cash. Does anyone care to respond on this one? Anyone give any perspectives on this? There's a comment in the chat, and that's Western Cape Department. Thank you, Azra. It's not always paid in cash. So there, yeah, I think that's your answer, Grant. Not yeah, the focus is not necessarily on the cash part in this one. Let's have a look though at the next one. The next one was we generally referred to this as verbal quotations, and this was between 2,000 and 10,000 rand, and hey, 3 verbal quotations, and everybody knows what the AG thought about this one. There is no provision in the new 2021 instruction for verbal quotations. So this whole notion of verbal quotations falls away and is not applicable going forward. I think this may have an immediate implication, policy implication on some institutions where they have still got a verbal quotations option in the policy. This is probably one that you're going to need to make some changes to quite quickly in this respect, because this will not be an option going forward from the 1st of July. The price quotations, 2007 practice note, started off then at the 10,000 threshold, up to 500, VAT included, and basically said you should invite and accept written quotations for requirements up to an estimated value of 500,000 from as many suppliers as possible that are registered on the list of prospective suppliers. Now, certainly when the central supplier database instruction was issued, this list of prospective suppliers was changed. The point though about the as many suppliers as possible has still lingered. So that was the old practice note. What does the new one say? Written price quotations, now this is from 2,000 up to 1 million, inclusive of all applicable taxes. The old practice notes spoke about VAT. So we are back to being consistent now with what is stated in other instructions, including the Preferential Procurement Regulations 2017, inclusive of all applicable taxes. Accounting officers, accounting authorities must invite written price quotations for requirements up to an estimated value of 1 million from prospective suppliers who are registered on the Central Supplier Database subject to 323 below. We'll look at 323 shortly. So must invite price quotations from prospective suppliers who are registered on the CSD. 322 then goes on to say, and 322 and 323 are, I think, quite limiting. And but let's understand what it says. It says institutions must prescribe in the SCM policies the minimum number of days for the invitation of price quotations, ensuring that prospective suppliers are afforded enough time to submit their quotations and balancing with the need for the organ of state to deliver services. So this is the first time now in the practice notes that we actually see a statement that is made to say you need to, in your policy, include in your policy the minimum number of days for the invitation of price quotations. It then goes on to say, and this is picking up now on the point in the old practice note that said as many as possible. 323 then goes on to say, higher level gang, institutions must prescribe in the SCM policies the minimum number of suppliers from whom quotations will be invited and must take into consideration the requirements of paragraph 325 on determining said number. So two policy implications here. One is that you must prescribe in your SCM policy the minimum number of days, and two, you must prescribe in your SCM policy the minimum number of suppliers. Now, how you do that, the basis on which you do that, I think needs to be unpacked at an institution level. This could be at a threshold that you might have within your organization to say, hey, up till 250,000, this number you must invite up to 500 or up to, you could decide. You could also decide to do this in terms of a commodity group or a category and say for this category of products, the minimum number of days is this, the minimum number of suppliers is this. So you could take two ways. I don't think that it's going to be acceptable that your policy says that this person will decide it. I think this is quite specific here to say that you can't delegate this. This is something that must be stated deliberately in your policy, both the number of days and also the number of suppliers that you will invite. Let's have a look at the big thing that that we all know was sometimes vague in the old practice note, but it's very explicit now in the new one. At least 3 written price quotations must be obtained from 3 different suppliers registered on the CSD. This registered on the CSD there's a sub point to that that's coming up shortly, but it is very, very specific. At least 3 written price quotations must be obtained from 3 different suppliers registered on the CSD. 324 then A then goes on to say, if it's not possible to obtain at least 3 written price quotations from 3 different suppliers registered on the CSD, except where suppliers are exempt from registration on the CSD, the reason should be recorded and approved by the accounting officer, authority, or his or her delegate committee before the order is issued and maintained for audit purposes. So very similar to what we've got at the moment. If you can't get the 3, then the reason should be recorded and approved by the accounting officer authority, his or her delegate committee, before the order is issued and maintained for audit purposes. This does not say you must continue to harass suppliers until you get the 3. This says you invite the 3. If you don't get 3, then you must just record the reason why. So the point that I raised around this 3 different suppliers registered on CSD is there are those 3 exceptions around inviting from bidders who are not registered on CSD. The 3 exceptions being the petty cash, the international suppliers with no presence in this country, and then I always forget the 3rd one. Henry normally comes in here and reminds me what the 3rd reason is. It's an accounting one. It will come to me shortly. So those 3 reasons. So they don't always have to be 3 off the CSD, because there might be 1 or 2 that you might get from overseas suppliers who don't have to be registered on CSD. 324B is an important one, and I see your hand, Grant. We'll come to you shortly. Accounting authorities must ensure that the prices received are market related, and where they are not, negotiations have to be entered into in line with the Preferential Procurement Regulations 2017. So they're getting back to this issue in the Preferential Procurement Regulations that state that you cannot award to a bidder whose prices are not market related. They're bringing this back in here to say, hey, you've got to make sure that the prices are market related. And if not, then you can negotiate. And there's those 3 options for negotiating. Sundry purchases. Thanks, Henry. So there's the two subpoints around the 3 quotations aspect. And then there is probably the most significant part of the instruction that comes in here, that we need to look at our policies. Accounting officers, accounting authorities must, in their SCM policies, prescribe the processes to be followed for the invitation of price quotations, including but not limited to the following. So must, in the SCM policies, prescribe the processes to be followed for the invitation of price quotations, including but not limited to the following. Persons or committee responsible for drafting the specifications, the methodology for the selection of suppliers from the central supplier database for invitation to quote, the period days for which the price quotations will be invited for closing date. So this is a repeat of an earlier point. The validity period of the price quotation after the closing date, policy issue, the method of inviting and receiving the price quotations, including the documentation that's required. So this is then saying, hey, if you don't do an email or you've got some other way of doing it or some e-auction or something, the method for inviting and the method for receiving the price quotation. The process to be followed when inviting price quotations from foreign suppliers. Interesting. There are not many policies we've seen where this level of detail is included. The persons or committee responsible for the evaluation of the price quotations, and we're seeing now in H, bringing into the evaluation process of the quotations process, a deliberate adjudication point as well. The persons or committee responsible for the adjudication of price quotations. 325I, proper record keeping for audit and record purposes, and then the provisions of the Preferential Procurement Regulations 2017. I'm going to come to this shortly because there's another statement in paragraphs 4 that talk a little bit more about that. So very, very significant, and hence in my invitation to everyone saying, hey, are these price quotations now going to be a quasi-tendering process, as somebody asked on the Telegram group that we had yesterday. Very significant what this is described here. Grant, you had a question.
Thanks, Sean. It was actually about the slide previous. So just that section A, where we have to get from 3 from the CSD. And I think the CSD instruction note actually says that if you can't find 3, you should still get quotes, but you can't award to them before they're actually on the system. So you have to encourage them to go onto the system. And so I'm just kind of, so obviously like that A says that, okay, I mean, basically that's where our deviations come from, correct? We can't get 3 quotes, so we're doing a deviation. Now, do we have to do a deviation if 2 of our suppliers are on the CSD and the third one isn't on the CSD, even if we're not going to be procuring from them?
Yeah, this is a very interesting implication. Well done, Grant. Because that one might not be exempt from being on CSD.
Absolutely correct. They may not be on the CSD at the moment, and therefore, and because we're not doing business with them, they're not going to really want to go into the CSD for not that, just supplying a quote.
For not doing that, yeah. Good point. A couple of points. Duly registered is usually the term. All right. Any other points? Yeah, as are good points. So duly registered is usually the term to be used. This is not saying that though. Hey. Good point. Let's flag these up and get some of these questions through to Treasury.
Can I come in, Sean?
Absolutely.
I've seen Godfrey. He's got a hand there, but Theo, go
ahead, Theo. Yes, sir.
To try to answer Grant, I think that statement says the reasons should be recorded and approved by the accounting officer. So even if you have that supplier that is not CSD registered, you will have the records which will be produced when it comes to the audit.
Good point. Yeah. So before the order is issued and maintained for audit purposes. Very good. Godfrey, well done, Theo.
Yes, Sean, thank you very much. Sean, I just wanted to check with you, man. I think in the slide before this one, 3.2.3, it make reference to that you need to read it in conjunction with 3.2.6, and I seem not to find 3.2.6 in this instruction. I'm not sure if I'm missing something.
So you're looking at the one that was issued yesterday morning, and the one that I included in the email invitation to everybody was the updated one that was issued last night. So that 3.2.6 has been changed to 3.2.5.
Oh, okay. Now, if you look into 3.2.5, look at J, where it makes reference to, I can't see your slide down there, where it makes reference to PPR 2017. I just want to, I'm checking on something here. If you look into PPR regulation 13, talking of cancellation of a tender.
Yes.
I'm trying to think if you were to add it in your policy. This one is talking of cancellation of a tender, where if you cancel for the second time for whatever reasons that have been provisioned there, you need to seek prior approval from Treasury. In this instance, is an RFQ. What will that mean in the, how do we reference it to the point?
Yeah, anyone, I've got an answer, but I'd rather someone else give an answer to that one. Anyone else want to respond on that? Yeah, it's if you look at the rest of that regulation, it then goes on to say that this does not apply to this cancellation, and getting approval from National Treasury does not apply to price quotations. So it is a positive development then in that you've now probably got a whole bunch of tenders that you would have to go to Treasury and ask them for approval, and now they will be treated as quotations and will not necessarily have to follow that process. Luwazi and then Henry.
Hi, Sean. Yeah, I thought we should just maybe see if we can unpack 3.2.5b, methodology for selection of suppliers from CSD for invitation to quote. For each procurement that you're undertaking, you need to have a methodology. I mean, you're dealing with multiple commodities, and there's going to be different approaches to that. So you need to list that in your policy for every different commodity that you have. Is that what they're implying there, or am I reading it incorrectly?
Yeah, good question. Let's Henry.
Hi, Sean. I just have another question. It's not a
yeah, let's put the question down. Yeah,
addressing law point, and just park the question maybe. And you might have addressed it. I've been having internet problems here. They said this instruction becomes effective 1st of July. I think the issue for me is not that we can start using this 1st of July. The issue is the policy. And some boards only sit quarterly. And so, yeah, are they going to give exemption in terms of that for, so that
Henry,
the policy would only become effective in 2 weeks or whatever? Sorry, in 2 or 3 months. The actual policy part of it is what I was trying to say. And it's not clear if the way this is read, I assume that, so the policy also technically have to be.
It's great question.
Live, I can't.
So
active.
Great question. Let's so important. Let's park that question. And maybe in this discussion with Luwazi, there's an answer to that question as well, Henry. Luwazi, I don't know if it's necessary to describe it per commodity. I mean, who else is on that does regular checking of CSD? Because the policy, the methodology does not necessarily have to prescribe the method per commodity. It might be, choose the commodity and search in the commodity. I don't know. It could be linked to the preferential procurement regulations to say that the methodology that we're going to use is you first go choose the commodity, then you check to see if there are sufficient number of level ones. And if there are a sufficient number of level ones that meet the policy statement to say the minimum number of people that you should invite, then that's fine. If there aren't, then you go to the next level. And you say, then you look at level 2s. And there might be a process like that. So I don't know if you necessarily go ahead.
How would that be recorded, Sean? Because remember, this is a policy, it becomes a policy item. And if you don't follow that, it's possible audit findings. So how do you track those steps, whether you followed that exact methodology? And how do you deal with suppliers that are not on CSD, but you want to invite them in the process? But this refers specifically to the methodology on suppliers on CSD.
So let's park the point around the suppliers not yet on CSD. That the process that needs to be followed for us inviting suppliers not on CSD is described in the CSD instruction. So what you're asking though is, in this methodology, if this methodology is put into the policy, how are we going to keep records that people followed that methodology, these different searches that they had? And yeah, good point. I mean, we've got some precedents in other instructions we could potentially use. But maybe Sichle's got a response on that one. Go ahead, Sichle. You can unmute, Sichle. There we are.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
Yes, good day. Yeah, how was it, John?
Yeah, good, and you. Welcome.
Good day, everybody. I think what is meant here is that if you look at it, it says the methodology. It's not, I would say it's not necessarily the process, step-by-step process.
Interesting.
Which says, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing that. It's sort of, you put in, since it's a policy, it's something that would be a founding statement for the action, for the activity that you will take. That's why it's I'm looking at it, they are putting it as a methodology. So in whatever manner that you might be using as per the institution to go to CSD to select suppliers, but you put it as an overarching mechanism that you have in place, and then you put it as a policy statement that for certain things you do this, for certain things you do that. I think that is the idea, or that is the principle behind the methodology, not necessarily like Lwazi going there saying for this commodity I do this what that finer details. I think that should be left for the operating procedure if you have one. But in terms of just an overarching statement, I think that is what is intended for this one.
Interesting. Thanks. Good point. Sichle, how do you read that first sentence though, around the SEM policies prescribe the processes to be followed, including but not limited to the following?
Yes. Yeah.
Because this, and you raised a really important point, Sichle, that many organizations have chosen to have policy and standard operating procedures, and they try and differentiate between those two, so that the procedure sometimes is not seen to be policy, and if you don't follow the procedure, then that will not be seen to be a non-compliance issue. Here they seem to want to push the processes into the policy. I hear your point around the methodology. I think it's just an interesting one here.
I'm still on my side, because legally, how do I put it? Policy is the one that is looked at, but in terms of the non-compliance, then the procedure is the amplification of what is in the policy. So in the policy, if it says you prescribe the process, it would not necessarily be the step-by-step process. For instance, you put in a policy that for quotations from, I'm making an example, quotations, or for example, you say you establish a quotations committee, you are establishing quotations committee, and then the quotations committee would be composed of, or in this manner, of a quotations evaluation, quotations adjudication committee. And then you say quotations evaluation will look at quotations from 30,000 up to 500,000, making an example. And then anything above 500,000 will be awarded by our probably accounting officer, or whatever the case may be. So in other words, in your policy, you are putting in these thresholds that you are putting in the previous policy, where you're saying, when does the quotation starts? It starts at this point. And then once from this point or from this threshold, then above, then it's a competitive bidding. So you do the same here with the quotations. You say the quotations committee will start from this point or from this threshold up to this threshold. Then above this threshold, then it's a bidding process or whatever the case. And then you say, you put in those things. So I think this is the process not necessarily step by step, but to give those things into effect in your policy. Because I also believe in separating the actual process from the policy statement, which gives overarching, because the process is then the one that amplifies the what you've put in your policy. It says you prescribe the number of days. You are going to say the quotations must open for 3 days, 3 working days, but you are not going to say in your policy you must fax the quotation, receive the confirmation of the quotation, confirmation of the fax, put it on file, wait for 3 days. After 3 days, you check on your fax, make sure it's 11 o'clock. You're not going to put all those details in the policy. Those details are left for the operating procedure. But you did have put it in your policy to say the quotations must remain open for this number of days, which is working days or the calendar days, however that you put it. So that is that's the statement you have there. So that's how I'm looking at it in the way. Yeah.
What you're raising is probably a lot more important to have a distinction then between process and procedure in this update to the policy here. Lwazi?
Yeah, no. I hear what Sihle is saying, but my concern is that it is deliberately put there to say that prescribe the processes, and I understand where he's coming from with this statement. But why would you need a methodology to select suppliers on CSD? That's something that you do intuitively, or knowing which categories you're targeting. But now to stipulate the actual methodology, and it seems like they want to box processes into policies, and it might be a challenge for very diversified organizations that deal with multiple commodities.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I get what Sihle is saying, but I'm still concerned because they do stipulate, unless they actually unpack what they mean by processes there, because it seems like you need to show a step-by-step approach for each of those items A to J. You need to show a step-by-step as to how you are going to go about doing those functions.
Very interesting. What Benu says 325 says we should have an evaluation and adjudication amounts more than 2,000. Yeah. Benu, there's I think Henry has really raised the key issue at this point. I tell you what, let me wrap this up. And then we could come back to maybe some of the high level conclusions here. So just to be sure that we've gone through now 3.2, which is the price quotations 2,000 to 1 million, 321, 322, 323, 324 we've covered, and 325 we've covered. There's no 326 as everyone correctly pointed out in the original version. I'm jumping now, I'm skipping 4.1 because this does still relate to price quotations. But it says very clearly here that the authorities must apply the prescripts of the Preferential Procurement Policy Framework Act and its associated regulations in line with the conditions stipulated therein. And then they get to describing specifically then, you may prescribe in the SEM policy of the institution that the preference point system be applied for procurement with a value of less than 30,000, if and when determined appropriate by the accounting officer, accounting authority. And the accounting officer, accounting authority must maintain a record of the analysis which informed the determination of which provisions of the preferential procurement regulations to apply. So this is coming back to 3.2.5 around the provisions of the preferential procurement regulations. And you all know, for example, that not only is regulation 4 then one that you've got to make a decision on. Do you apply regulation 4, which is the pre-qualification one, the level of the EME or QSE or the subcontracting? Do you apply that to less than 30,000? But also, I think the big important one for me here is the functionality point. You know, do you apply? Must you have functional criteria with a minimum threshold? You know, those things need to be considered, need to be determined, and you've got to keep a record as to the analysis that informed this decision. So quite important implications in this one. And I just bring up 4.2 because I think it is a very, very specific issue around quotations and you know, how we're going to apply different provisions. So you have discretion, for example, around the functional criteria and the thresholds. You know, I think that there probably is a gap for you to say that you don't need to, if it's not necessary, to have functional criteria and a minimum threshold for quotations up till whatever. You can decide that. But what informed that decision and the analysis that informed that decision, we need to keep a record of. Let's just jump past the quotations one to just wrap up on the overall instruction and talk about tenders. Nothing huge and significant in this one. You know, a million rand inclusive of all applicable taxes, but just saying you must invite competitive bids for all procurement above 1 million inclusive of all applicable taxes. And then it goes on to say, hey, competitive bids must be advertised in at least the government tender bulletin and e-tender publication portal. The accounting officers, accounting authorities must advertise competitive bids on the institution websites, may also on the institution's website, and any other appropriate media should an accounting officer deem it necessary to ensure greater exposure to potential bidders. The responsibility for advertisement costs in this respect is for the relevant accounting officer, accounting authority. Now, the fact that this was issued yesterday, and the fact that it does not do away with instruction 1, I think probably still means that instruction 1 still does stand under the circumstances. I don't know if this necessarily now says, hey, you know, instruction 1 falls away. This now applies from the 1st of July. It'll be interesting if the government tender bulletin does have its act together by the 1st of July. But interesting little nuance there, I think. It then goes on to say that you must publish awards of bids in the government tender bulletin and e-tender publication portal, and must also publish awards in other media that the bid was advertised in. No, nothing different here. This is consistent with the regulation as well. And then there is one that somebody flagged up to say that this is material, but I am not sure that I see any difference here between what we had previously. Accounting officers and authorities must report within 10 working days of approval of the award of the contract to the relevant Treasury and the Auditor General all cases where goods and services above the transaction value of $1 million were procured in terms of Treasury Regulation 16A 6.4. 16A 6.4 is where it is impractical to invite open competitive tenders. So this is the competitive deviation. The report must include the description of the goods and services, the name of the suppliers, the amounts involved, and the reasons for dispensing with the competitive bidding process. I thought this exists already, and so when I saw the email that came through yesterday to say that this is a material difference or there was an error, I wasn't too sure. Did anyone else see that comment or see the email? Or have any other views around this one?
Hi, Sean.
Yeah, hi, Lebo.
If you look at the last sentence where it says the reason for dispensing with the competitive bidding process, I think that is where the problem is, because this section deals with deviations.
Yeah.
So how do you then dispense with, how do you then justify for dispensing with a competitive bidding process? Is that not supposed to be saying the reason for not dispensing with a competitive bidding process?
I must just go through the grammar of that one again.
Remember, you on 3.3.4, you're not dispensing with a competitive bidding process. So why are they saying you must detail the reasons for dispensing with a competitive bidding process when you are not dispensing with a competitive bidding process?
Isn't that what 16A64 is, the Nibelheim? 16A64 is where it's impractical.
Yes.
Maybe it's is it the grammar maybe that you're referring to here, which is confusing.
No, remember, Sean. Okay, go, Celine.
No, it's fine. I wanted to say to Sean that myself and you did discuss this paragraph yesterday. So what you are saying, Sean, is that the word not, reasons for not dispensing, it's missing because you did not dispense competitive bidding process. So all that you are saying is that from this last paragraph of 3.3.4, the word not is missing. If you read it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see. And I think it's going to be all right. Yeah, let's let me think through that some more. I can see where the confusion's coming in, but I think this is already the negative. So the dispensing is you've already dispensed, you've already done away with competitive bidding. So not doing away with. Good point. Good point. Okay, let's see. There's something else to also just confirm then with Treasury if that. Good one. Thank you for that. Okay, let's just wrap it up. The general provisions, and there's a comment that Sharon raised already around the fact that the 2007 version talks about goods, works, or services. Works may not be deliberately split into different parts or items of lesser value, merely for the sake of procuring the goods, works, or services, otherwise than through the prescribed procurement process. And then the 2021 version is very similar to that, but it just does not talk about works, does not include works. And Sharon is just saying that, does that mean that this does not apply to works or to infrastructure? Sharon, if I could maybe just give a perspective, there are a number of legal opinions and points of view out there on this one at a constitutional level, because the Constitution also does not mention works. The Constitution just talks about goods and services, and the court cases and the legal opinions out there have all concluded that the works, construction, infrastructure does fall under the services aspect and is covered by Section 217 of the Constitution, and then also 16A. So I think that might be something just to bear in mind. The one case in particular to refer to, Sharon, is the AXA court case. Was it the AXA court case where they tried to, no, I forget now, it wasn't AXA, it was another one where somebody tried to do away with and not follow a 16A process because this was construction related or something. and the court said no, absolutely, this must follow. I think it was AXA, but I'm not sure if it was the Imperial one or the exclusive books case. But I'd be surprised if Treasury come back and say, hey, yeah, no, you well spotted, Sharon. Infrastructure and works are going to be looked after separately and differently. I'd be surprised if they do come back with that. Please do let us know next week if you do get some feedback on that one. Just lastly, this is lastly, is just to say that, hey, accounting officers may in their SCM processes lower but not increase the different threshold values as specified in paragraph 3.1.3.3, and then direct that a competitive bidding process be followed for any procurement below 1 million. Now, this was included in the draft public procurement bill, also the draft regulations that came out in 2012, that hey, the accounting officer may direct that a quotation that is less than 1 million should actually follow a bidding process and go through a bid committee system. Or you can specify that by case, or for a category of goods or services. So interesting that this is now deliberately stated in the instruction. Let's just come back to Henry's point, if we can just unpack this a little bit. So the instruction says that this is effective from the 1st of July. The instruction is very, very specific around policy updates that need to take place. And these policy updates are not insignificant. I mean, an institution needs to apply its mind, needs to think about how we describe these methods, all these issues around processes and procedure and methods, and do we do this per commodity? We've got to now move from 2,000 up to 1 million. Do we tier this, have something different for different price quotations that we have, as many organizations do? But that needs to be done. Now, this is slightly different in that if they had just revised the thresholds and said, hey, now it's $1 million, no problem, and then you wait until your policy is changed in order to decide now when that $1 million now is effective for your institution, because remember, you can always have it lower, as we've just seen now, you can always have it lower. And so you might say, so there's no real rush now. But the problem is that they're introducing something that now applies to your existing quotation processes as well. This does not say that this must be done for price quotations 500,000 Rand and upwards. This says this must be done for everything from 2,000 Rand and upwards. So what are the implications now of quotations that are going to be running from the 1st of July, where policies may not be updated and may not have been updated and may not have been approved by the accounting authority or accounting officer? Any thoughts on that?
Sean, yes. So in my view, just if we just take the timeline between now and the 1st of July, this to me is just impractical. So based on what you've said, that institutions have to actually work through, what they will be doing in terms of any policies, processes, and procedures. So it's just impractical. You cannot expect a board to just meet at short notice to deal with this level of stuff. There's a board cycle. There are board procurement committees that work through these things comprehensively. Secondly, and we've said this numerous amounts of times to National Treasury in our consultation documents, it's just simply unprofessional. World best practice on policies are that you separate policies from processes and from procedures and from guidelines and from teaching documents, etc. They're seeking to reverse all of that into a policy. Now, we at the NRF, are proud that we've got a policy framework, a policy on policies. And this clearly falls completely outside of that because it's not a world-class standard. I think National Treasury they haven't said it, but because they've micromanaged the municipalities, maybe they expect us to go and read all this stuff there and to get some sense of what should go into, at a policy level. But this to me is just ridiculous. In fact, we at the NRF, have probably about a 30, 40 page policy. I think an organization like the CSR, and I'm speaking maybe about 10 years ago, I'm not sure if it's not the case, their policies are limited to about 2 pages. Do not deal with this micro level. It's just not appropriate at a policy level. So, for us at the NRF, we are just driving so many things hard, particularly transformation at this stage, to break a leg, to try and divert ourselves from that in the immediate short term, to put something that's at this level of impracticality in place is just unreasonable. And of course, if something's unreasonable, it's also unlawful. So, I'm not being difficult. I suspect National Treasury planned this thing at least 3 months ago, and they're just really late. And they didn't consult with people in terms of these things, and they would have been told in no uncertain terms that it's completely impractical to expect something like this. So we'll just deal with this we'll prioritize it in our schedule of work and fill it in where it's necessary. But we certainly cannot focus on putting into policies things that are not policies. Thanks, Sean.
That's right. Benu, you mentioned a memo can be issued. Maybe just unpack that a little bit. I'm not too sure that can be done this time. Any thoughts, Benu? Are you able to unmute? Go ahead, Benu, there you unmute.
Thank you very much. In government departments and the public entities, we issue, memos in between. Okay, this is the changes. There is a policy difference between because of the instruction notes and the guidelines issued by Treasury or any other relevant departments. So these are the changes that should be effected because of the changes that was prescribed by these relevant authorities. Until such a time, we have the time to incorporate everything into the policy and approved by the board. That can be approved, the memo can be approved by the CFO or the CEO. So that should be an easier process in the meantime.
Yeah. I think what's different here though, Benu, isn't it that if Treasury issues an instruction and says, this applies from now on, you have to use SPD 1 and cancel SPD 2. There's no policy determination process that's needed by the public entity or the department. You don't have to determine anything. National Treasury have said, do away with SPD 2 and introduce SPD 1. You issue a memo to ensure that your people know that this now has come from National Treasury and do away with SPD 2 and here's SPD 1. This is different, isn't it, Benu? In that you need to determine this now as an organization. This is stuff that typically is not in policies. Organizations don't always have this stuff that's described at this level of detail. So it's not, I think it's a little bit different to just issuing a memo. But I don't know, Benu, maybe you've got a different, do you see the difference between this?
I agree with you, Sean. The problem that we have at the moment is we do not have the time to finalize the policy. We now we only have how many days?
Yeah,
that's the issue. So mitigate that risk. We have the issue. We have something informing the team, the procurement team. Okay, this is what has to be followed, and we are going to be finalizing the policy. So in the meantime,
so
we can use as a memo.
Will that memo then outline 3.2.5, those aspects in 3.2.5?
Exactly. Exactly. It should address everything.
Sikle?
Yeah, Sean, that is correct. Because another problem is that where you might have to appoint quotations committees, probably, and also the determination of who drafts the specifications.
And all those points,
therefore, then it requires drafting these, appointing these committees requires the terms of reference. And therefore, you need to have the terms of reference of the quotations committee as to how do they differ and where do they draw the line with the bid committees, and also the appointment of people that are going to be in those committees. Who are they, and how do you determine them? Because remember that there's a prescription with the BAC. There's no prescription with the quotations adjudication committee, if I call it that way. So all of those things need to be taken into consideration. So up to the 1st of July is something that you can't implement, but it's something that you need to say these are the changes that are coming, and therefore they're going to be implemented in this manner. And also it has an impact on your delegations of authority. Probably some delegations, somebody's delegated to award this much and so on. Now with this, it will definitely impact on the delegations of authority. And some delegations of authority have to go through up to the board level for approval of a change, or up to whatever level, the very highest level of the institution. So all of those things it's not something that you can say 1st of July, you are able to implement. But the issuing of the memo, for me as such, is to say, you are saying now, you are preparing the institution that these are the changes that are coming, and you are anticipating to implement them in the soon, or in the near soon future. For me, that's how I'm looking at it, rather than them being implemented like as in 1st of July. To really 1st of July, no, it won't happen, especially institutions where they are boards.
No, I mean, if I'm a board member and I have a board meeting in the middle of July or in August or September, and I'm suddenly told that, oh, by the way, XYZ is putting the specifications together. We're running with everything up to $1 million and on a quotations basis, and we've delegated these to this person, these to these people. I'd be pretty furious. The delegation of authority decisions, these are material policy decisions, and I'd be quite worried if somebody just issued a memo and said, hey, this is how it's going. I think it could be, difficult. Azra's difficult to realize change when processes are decentralized, Azra. Difficult to realize change when processes are centralized. Ezra, don't you mean centralized? So Thea, you agree with Sikle? Yeah. So is there a risk that Treasury are going to issue another update to this to say, oh, by the way, this is deferred by another 2 or 3 months to allow people to get their act together and get the boards to agree? I think there's a good chance that might happen. How does one get hold of the recordings of the session? We will make those available through yeah, I think we should wrap it up. We've got let's just open up any last questions. Koleka, in the email that we send out, there's a OneDrive linkage in there. And if you go into the OneDrive linkage, there are folders within that OneDrive folder. And there will be a folder in there with the recording of today in that folder. So it should be all okay. Thanks. I saw your hands up there. So will be available. All the other recordings that we've managed to pull together in the last couple of months, we've also included in there. Any last couple of questions? Now, the point is, yeah, there's some policy implications here, but certainly there's probably good news. There's a whole group of quotations now that you could more cost effectively manage than through a tendering process that we have. So there probably is some good news here. Go ahead, Ron.
Sean, thanks for opening the discussion up. And I'm, if we're at the end of this section and you're opening it up generally, I'm particularly interested in people's comments on the frequently answered questions from National Treasury on irregular expenditure.
On the irregular expenditure.
I haven't read it myself, but normally this thing is so highly subjective, so badly drafted, so badly understood, so badly understood by the courts, so badly understood by the public protector. Just the sense is, does the frequently answered questions actually address the frequently answered questions around people's minds? And, is the guidance reasonable, or are they just, again, putting into irregular stuff which is not? And, what are the burning questions that are not included? That's what I'm particularly interested in.
Any other thoughts? Anyone want to comment on that? I'm just going to actually share this quickly. Actually, I can't share it quickly. Yeah, any thoughts on Ron's point? Anyone looked at it? So it was issued early last week. It's not in the supply chain or the Office of the Chief Procurement Officer website. It's under the Accountant General. Let me just quickly pull it up and this is version 2 coming through now. Quickly, 10 pages only. Quickly share this. Anyone seen this? Reporting of irregular expenditure, transactions involving capital assets. To institutions where there's a procurer and a budget holder, fees paid to implementing agents. I know there's some that are interested in that. Multi-year contracts, adjusting and non-adjusting events, period of assessment and determination of irregular expenditure. So this is related to the sections 18. And so this is really what it goes through. Any thoughts on who has looked at this?
Sean, so just from what I'm seeing for the first time, there seems to be more an accounting, an accounting frequently answered questions. This is not about SEM. And SEM really is where, everybody, internal audit, external audit, National Treasury, all focused. They're all looking at SEM for irregular expenditure, whereas, irregular is a breach of legislation. It occurs in HR, it occurs in operations, it occurs everywhere. But they keep focusing on SEM. So we wrote to them about 2 years. We didn't have the courtesy of an official response. asking them for when they're going to put out a guideline. This to me is not is not up to standard. And we're going to continue to spend considerable resources arguing with the auditors and National Treasury about whether something constitutes irregular or not. This is a unique South African creature of statute, and it's just in my mind, something that is in fact not advancing the country's growth. If they focused on fruitless and wasteful expenditure and corruption and corrupt expenditure, etc., then we're advancing. But this creature called irregular, to me, is just holding us all back. So,
interesting perspective.
And they can't even give us guidance. So everybody has a different view about whether something's irregular or not, and and it's just holding us back. Thanks, Sean.
Great, good point.
So
okay,
especially if there was value realized. Especially if if it's not like it did not go to waste. I mean, the focus is really,
absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, good point. Which is how it was previously, certainly, but now there's got to be consequence in a whole range of issues. All right, very good, everybody. So there it is. Let's see. I think there's it's important that institutions start to plan some work around the policies and what this means, and particularly around all these issues that the instructions say now need to be included in a policy, and plan that, and but be deliberate about that. I think if you feel that the memo mechanism will suffice and will do, you probably still have to do a little bit of work around that and get that going and get that out, and just make sure that you do get the CFO and the whoever you need to. Yeah, don't hesitate to do this. This is significant. This is 14, 15 years of 500,000 has always been the threshold of quotations, and now it's doubled. Which, by the way, if you look at, Ron, I don't know if you've ever done that calculation, but if you take 500,000 and you adjust it for inflation, it would probably be closer to 1.5 million now. So it's already, I don't know, Ron, have you ever done that calculation? If you took 500,000 and put it in today's terms?
For me, I was, and possibly I was fortunate, because when they did the consultation on the thresholds, it missed me. So I only found out after the event that this process had occurred. We were aware of it, but it didn't come to my desk. So I'm glad. Where I get depressed, Sean, is if I benchmark this internationally. So if I just look at what's happening in other countries like China and India and Europe and the United States, we way out of line. This 500,000 is a drop in the ocean compared to them. The millions a drop in the ocean. The amount of effort that goes into the whole BSc, BEC, BAC process for such minor amounts. We are now as an organization going to be, authorizing that our senior people sign up to R1 million. This is minor stuff. With a 4 billion rand budget, this is minor. So there's no sense of making these figures big enough. Even petty cash. I mean, international institutions, you don't mess around with such low figures for quotes. We should bet a far higher figure where it's just not practical to get 3 quotes and you want to buy quickly. How they can stick to 2,000 rand is just boggles the mind. So in order to move forward, we need to focus on what's major. And a number of years ago, they had, I think 2011, they brought out something about expenditure over 100 million. And even if you read the variations, that implies those variations seem to be linked to 100 million figure. So why aren't we focusing on, the big levels and the additional processes that apply from those, and then
interesting,
monitor it? But this million rand and trying to get us to do things in policies, etc. It's just really micro. It's just badly managed in my view. If we compare ourselves to best practices elsewhere. Sorry, Sean, I need to stop speaking. Thanks.
Thank you. That's a good line to close on. And any last comments? We're at 11:30, just past that. Let's finish the recording. I'm just going to stop the recording now, and